Hello and welcome to the New York State Archives short presentation on the records lifecycle. Now the first question, of course, is what exactly is the records lifecycle? Well, as you can see here by this graphic, the records lifecycle has basically four main steps to it. You can see here the first one is creation and receipt. So what does that mean? Well, when you have to purchase something, you create a purchase order, right? Perhaps you're doing it in some sort of a purchasing system. You've now created a record. Perhaps you've received a resume with a job application. You've now received a record. Both of those will have to be saved. So it quickly goes into the next phase, which is active records. And what do we mean by active records? An active record is one that you reference frequently. So generally the rule of thumb is at least once a month you're referencing a record. These are the records you generally keep near you in your office. If we're talking about paper records, usually in the filing cabinet. And you'll need to reference those quite frequently. But over time, you'll notice you reference them less and less to the point where you really don't need to look at them all that often. That's when the record goes into the next stage, which is the inactive record stage. This is when you may take your paper records out of the filing cabinet, put them into a storage box, and send them into a record storage area. It could be off-site, could be on-site, but you're getting them out of your office. Now, you need to save these records usually for some kind of legal reason, right? There's statutes of limitations. You may need them for audits, things like that. Or there's a law somewhere, perhaps a state or federal law, saying you have to keep these kind of records for so long. Then it goes to final disposition after its inactive period. Now, final disposition does not necessarily mean destruction. It could also mean that you're going to send it to an archive. Now, 95% of records will be destroyed, but about 5% do have permanent value, usually historical research value, and so you're going to keep those forever. So records have value, and one of the main concepts behind the records life cycle is that over time, the value of records decreases, and eventually it gets to the point they lose all value, and that's when you're going to want to dispose of most records. So records could have legal value. So for instance, a city charter, which proves that your city has a legal right to exist and lays out all the rights of the city. It could have fiscal value. Okay, that's how you keep track of your budget. And again, these may be records you may need for an audit. Administrative value. Those are records you need generally on a day-to-day basis to govern your local government or state agency. And then finally, there's historical research value. Some records, again, a fairly small percent, will have this historical research value, so you're going to want to save them forever. Now we're going to take a look at the phases of the life cycle. So what we're going to do is in each phase, we're going to take a look at the value of the record and give you a small example of some of the records management activities that should take place during each phase. So in the first phase, again, the creation receipt phase, the value of those records are high. So, and here are some of the activities that you should undertake during the creation and receipt phase of the records lifecycle. One is to assess the need for the record. Oftentimes, people create records out of habit. Their organization has been creating them for a long time, but sometimes you need to take some time and think, what's the real purpose of the record? Do I really need it? Does it have any legal or fiscal or administrative value? Is this information now available in a different record? If so, you may want to just think about stop creating that record. There's no need for it. Very important is you want to identify the record's retention right away. So for you state agencies, you would use the general schedule for state agency records or an agency-specific schedule that you have created for that record in cooperation with the state archives. Local governments, you will use the Local Government Schedule 1, also known as the LGS 1. Another activity is you want to designate the official copy of that record. There could be multiple copies created, and since retention schedules only apply to one official copy of the record, you're going to want to identify that up front at the creation stage. And also, you may want to decide on other formats for the record. If it's a paper record, will you eventually want to scan it or perhaps microfilm it? If it's an electronic record, do you have a real need to print it to paper? If you don't, keep it electronically. But you may have a reason, such as a signature requirement, that you need to print that record. The next phase, the active phase, the value of the records are high. That's why you need them close to you in your office so you can easily access them. And some of the activities here would be developing a filing system. You need to be able to find these records quickly, and you need some sort of a system to do that. And you should do this whether the records are paper or electronic. Create office schedules. What is an office schedule? An office schedule is a compendium of the larger schedules. So for you local governments, if you take a look at the LGS-1, it's rather large. There are a lot of items in it. And so what the office schedule does is you just take out those records that your particular office creates and you put them into your own small schedule. Also in the office schedule, you're going to want to identify when the active records become inactive. So for instance, if you're looking at purchase orders, you may say that the record is active for 1 year. At the end of that 1 year, you'll box up the records and then save them for the remaining 5 years on their retention period for a total of 6 years. You're going to want to develop and apply records management policies for all devices. Of course, in today's world, we not only create records on a desktop computer, we may also be doing it on a laptop, on a smartphone, on a tablet, and we may be saving records other places like in the cloud or on a flash drive. So you need to develop policies. How are you going to handle the records on all these different formats? And finally, create and implement a social media policy. If your organization is using social media, you are creating records and you're going to have to come up with a plan on how to properly manage them. Now the inactive phase, okay? Now, generally the value of these are low, or you could say at least lower than the active phase. Okay, this is why you're going to want to separate these inactive records out from your active records, box them up, and put them in a storage area so you have room for the growth of your active records, and those are the only ones you're going to want to keep near you. Another activity is to store the inactive records in standard size boxes. That would be a 1 cubic foot box on 18 gauge steel shelving. And you want to use 18 gauge steel shelving because it's designed to hold the weight of the records. If you use anything weaker than that, what's going to happen is that shelving is going to start to bend, perhaps buckle, and even collapse, which could be quite dangerous. You have a migration plan in place for your electronic records. That means a plan on how you're going to migrate records from a platform that's now becoming obsolete onto a new platform, and after that, a newer platform into the future to make sure that you do not lose any important electronic records. And another activity, electronic documents are stored as PDFs to ensure long-term accessibility. I'm sure you all know that a PDF is portable document format. The A here stands for archives. Okay, this is a version of PDF that is designed for long-term accessibility of the record. Now we're going to take a quick look here at cost savings. Okay, so why are you going to want to transfer an inactive records out of your active office space and into storage space? And this is a good example. And again, it shows you the value of that following the records life cycle, which says that the value of records decrease over time. So when those records become less valuable, you're going to want to spend less money on them. So you can see here, office space, of course, is more expensive than warehouse or storage space. So even if at town hall you're storing your records in the basement, okay, that basement space, that storage space down there, has a lot less value than does your office space, say on the main floor or second floor. So in an office, the ratio of cubic foot to square foot is 1:1. And why is that? Because you're storing them in filing cabinets and they can only go so high. Now, in inactive record storage, you can store records all the way up to the ceiling, and that room is also specifically designed to maximize the amount of space. So generally, the ratio there is 5:1, meaning 5 cubic feet to 1 square foot. So if storage in your office space is $20 per cubic foot, then it will only be $1 per cubic foot in storage space. So you can see here how just transferring your records from active storage to inactive storage can save your organization a lot of money. So now let's take a look at the disposition phase, and this one is destruction. So the value, obviously it's none. So your records have now lost all value, and if something does not have any value to you, you do not want to spend any money on keeping that now valueless record, right? It's not an asset anymore to your organization, so you're going to want to dispose of it. And some of the activities here are records of all formats are destroyed, not just paper. This is important. Your paper records, in many cases, may have an electronic copy or counterpart to them, so it's important when you dispose of those paper records, you also dispose of the electronic version. All destructions are authorized and documented. So you should be using a destruction authorization form listing all the records that you are disposing, and it should be signed by the records management officer or the department head from the department that created that record. Finally, legal holds are placed on the destruction of records during litigation. If your organization is being sued, you do not want to keep destroying records because that could cause quite a lot of suspicion in the court, and your organization could end up getting in a lot of legal hot water if you continue to dispose of records during litigation. And finally, we have disposition, archiving. So the value here obviously is high. These records have historical research value, so you're going to want to save them forever. If you look up their retention period in the retention schedules, it will say permanent. Okay, you are never to dispose of these records. And some of the activities here, use of archival records is promoted through a public outreach program. So for instance, let's use the example of a town again. The town may want to reach out and let local genealogists and historians know that they have some valuable historical records that they can use for that research. They may want to reach out to the local schools and promote their use there, have the children come in and teach them how to use archival records and how to research and what they can do with them. Indexes and finding aids exist to promote the easy use and access of these archival records. Okay, if you've got indexes created, if you have good descriptions of the records, they're much easier for people to use. And also the oldest and most valuable archival records are reformatted. So you may want to digitize them for easy access, or you may want to create microfilm backups of those records. And you want to do this so users can use those other formats and you do not have to touch those old valuable records, many of which may be becoming, brittle and fragile as they age. And the one thing that damages records the most is human handling. So if you could avoid human handling of these records by using a scanned image or perhaps microfilm, you'll be able to protect the original much longer. And here are some other activities that perhaps may not fit neatly into one of these phases. Something like if you're a local government, passing a records management law that's really going to codify your records management program and help to maintain that program long term. Appoint a records management officer. Both state agencies and local governments should do this. Both should also create a records advisory board. That would be key people in your organization that periodically meet as a board and provide advice and guidance on your records management program. You should also have appropriate staffing and funding for your program, and records management training is also important. And you should do this at least once a year. All staff should be trained in your records management policies and procedures. And finally, let's talk about other resources. We do have the Records Lifecycle publication that goes along with this presentation. There is a little bit more detail in that, so you may want to take a look at the publication. It's available on our website. And also on our website, we have a lot of other publications on a whole array of records management topics. And we also have some really good web content, including what we call the Records Management Toolbox, where you'll find sample forms, such as a records destruction authorization form. And we have sample policies and procedures and other valuable tools. If you are a local government, perhaps your most valuable asset is your Records Advisory Officer, or RAO. Each local government type in New York State is assigned a Records Advisory Officer, and you can visit our website, find out who your RAO is, and also the contact information will be there. You can contact them with any questions. You can ask them for specialized training, and they do make house calls if you need them to come out and visit you. Scheduling and state agency services staff is here in Albany to help state agencies, and there is other archive staff here who can help you too. And finally, we have webinars like this one, and we also do have live webinars. We usually have a few a month. So again, check out our website and see what webinars are currently available. And thank you for watching this presentation today, and we hope you found it valuable.